Good morning students, this is your history lesson. Students, today we will read chapter 2, Ancient Egypt of the Pharaohs. So we start our lesson. Students, the meaning of ancient is belonging to very distant past and no longer in existence. And Egypt is located in the northeastern corner of Africa. It means we will read about the past which is no more in existence in the region of Pharaohs. We will read about the ancient Egypt of the Pharaohs. We will read about the past and old time that is no more now. So, we will start our lesson. You are supposed to open page number 6 and read about Pharaohs with me. Students, do you know who was Pharaohs? The Pharaohs of ancient Egypt were the supreme leaders of the land. They were like kings or emperors. They ruled both Upper and Lower Egypt and were both the political and religious leader. The Pharaohs was often thought of as one of the gods. Students, the name Pharaohs comes from a word meaning great house, describing a palace or kingdom. The Pharaoh's wife or queen of Egypt was also considered a powerful ruler. She was called the great royal wife. Sometimes women became the rulers and were also called pharaohs, but it was generally men. The son of the current pharaoh would inherit the title and would often go through training so he could be a good leader. So, pharaohs were typically male, although there were some noteworthy female leaders. Understand, students? So, the name Pharaohs comes from a word meaning great house, describing a palace or kingdom. Now come to the reading, page number 6. Nearly 5,000 years ago, an ancient civilization existed along the river Nile in Egypt, just as the Indus Valley civilization existed around the river Indus. Students, you know very well that river Indus is situated in Pakistan and river Nile is situated in Egypt. So, in Egypt, about 5,000 years ago, there was an old civilization as same as in Pakistan, named as Indus Valley civilization. That is known as Indus Valley civilization. The river Nile is nearly 4,000 miles long and is the longest river in the world. So students, we can say that river Nile is about 6,670 kilometers in length and is the longest river in Africa and in the world. Although it is generally associated with Egypt, only 22% of the Nile's course runs through Egypt. So, it is very important river as we talk about the ancient civilization of Egypt. The White Nile rises from Lake Tanganyika in southeast Africa and runs south to north through Tanzania, Uganda and Sudan, where it is joined by the Blue Nile, which rises from Lake Tana in Ethiopia. So students, the White Nile is a river in Africa, and the name comes from coloring due to clay carried in the water. So it is White Nile due to its clay carried in the water. Students, Tanganyika, Tanzania, Uganda and Sudan are all African countries. And we come to know that Nile is very important river because this is the only river that runs through all these countries. The delta of the Nile is on the Mediterranean Sea. Delta is an area of low, flat land shaped like a triangle where a river splits and spreads out into several branches before entering the sea. A delta is an area of low, flat land shaped like a triangle where a river splits and spreads out into several branches before entering the sea. The delta of the Nile is on the Mediterranean Sea. The Nile is flanked by deserts on both east and west. Flanked means guard or strengthen from the side. So the Nile is strengthened or get strong by deserts on both east and west, and there are forests, grasslands and highlands in the south. So on the south side there are forests, grasslands and highlands. Now come to the importance of the river Nile. What is the importance of the river Nile, students? Do you know? In Egypt, the river Nile creates a fertile green valley across the desert. This is the importance. In Egypt, the river Nile creates a fertile green valley across the desert. It was by the banks of the river that one of the oldest civilizations in the world began. The ancient Egyptians lived and farmed along the Nile, using the soil to produce food for themselves and their animals. So this is the importance of the river Nile. Let's start reading of this paragraph. Ancient Egyptians found many uses for the river Nile. When spring came around, the water ran down the mountains and flooded the Nile and surrounding areas. And when it receded mean go or move back. When the river Nile moved back, it left fertile soil on the banks where the ancient Egyptians grew crops. Soil is the upper layer of earth in which plants grow. So when the river Nile moved back, it left fertile layer on the bank where the people would grow crops. The river also provided them with fresh water for drinking and bathing, and it was also used for transportation of goods, making trade flourish. Flourish means grow or develop in a healthy way. So it was also useful for trading things and transporting goods from one place to another. So the people used the river for transporting their goods from one place to another. Along the shores of the Nile grew a reed-like plant called papyrus. Students, shore is the land along the edge of a sea, lake or wide river. So it is the edge of the sea, and papyrus is a material similar to thick paper that was used in ancient time as a writing surface. So the river Nile was also very helpful, very useful to grow reed-like plant like papyrus, which was used for making paper, as I have told you already. The river banks provided materials for building. Cotton and flax were grown for cotton fabric and linen. So students, flax is a blue flowered plant that is cultivated for its seed and for textile fiber made from its stalks. So it's a type of plant that is very useful in textile field. The people enjoyed a prosperous lifestyle because of the Nile. So people were very developed, very successful due to the river Nile. Egyptians were mostly priests, scribes, craftsmen and farmers. So students, people belonged to different professions as they were priests, scribe is a person who copies documents. So they were craftsmen, they were artists and farmers. Farmers, you know very well, who works in the field, who grow plants and work in fields. Now understand students, this is the importance of the river Nile. That river Nile was very helpful and very useful for agriculture, for irrigation. People got water for irrigation, and it was very helpful in trading as they transported their things from one place to another. Similarly, river water was very rich and very helpful for growing different crops that were useful in industries as well and textile industries. Administration under the Pharaoh. So the ruler of Egypt was called the Pharaoh, and he owned everything in the land. Owned, have something as one's own. So the ruler of Egypt was called the Pharaoh. The person who was ruling the land of Egypt was called Pharaoh, and he owned everything in the land. He was the one person who possessed everything in the land, and he was helped by an organized army, a police force and a huge number of ministers and government officials to run the country. So different people were appointed on different ranks to help him to run the country, and in those posts there were army officers, police officers and number of ministers. The Pharaoh had a vizier or prime minister who reported to him daily on what was happening all over Egypt. So students, we learned that he had a huge force He had a vizier or prime minister whose duty was to report him daily what was happening on his land. The vizier was also the chief justice, and people came to him if the lower courts could not handle their problems fairly. So the other duty of vizier was to do justice among the people and solve the problems fairly. This system of government carried on successfully for hundreds of years, but we also hear of cruel Cruel mean extremely unkind, and harsh. Harsh mean bad tempered, rough rulers among them. So, if we go to the past and we study the history, we will come to know that the government was very organized, and all the persons appointed for different tasks were performing their duties very well. But within the passage of time, there were some people who were very bad tempered and unkind to the people of the state. Now come to page number 7. The ancient Egyptians were polytheists. Students, polytheists, you know very well, worshipping many gods. Many theists, believers in gods. So, the meaning of polytheists is worshipping many gods. It means the people of Egypt worshipped many gods. They believed in many gods. They had nearly 2000 gods and goddesses who usually had animal heads. As you can see from the picture that there is a picture who has animal head. Temples were built to worship them. So they built temples in the honor of the god so that they could be able to worship them, and the space was used for other purposes too, such as a school for children and for gatherings and festivals for the people. Students, what are hieroglyphs? Hieroglyph is a character used in a system of pictorial writing. A character used in a system of pictorial writing, particularly that form used on ancient Egyptian monuments. Hieroglyph symbols may represent the objects that they depict, but usually stand for particular sounds or groups of sounds. Clear, students? Hieroglyphs symbols may represent the objects that they depict, but usually stand for particular sounds or groups of sounds. Students, as we are talking about the ancient Egyptians, so in that era, the ancient Egyptians believed that it was important to record and communicate information about religion and government. Thus, they invented written scripts that could be used to record this information. The most famous of all ancient Egyptian scripts is Hieroglyph. However, throughout 3000 years of ancient Egyptian civilization, at least 3 other scripts were used for different purposes. Using these scripts, scribes were able to preserve the beliefs, history, and ideas of ancient Egypt in temple and tomb walls and on papyrus scrolls. So students, this is about hieroglyph. Now you have to open book page number 7 so that we will start reading and understand more about hieroglyphs. The Egyptians called hieroglyphs the words of God, as these were used primarily by the priests. These painstakingly drawn symbols were suitable for decorating the walls of temples too. Painstakingly, in a way that shows you have taken a lot of care or made a lot of effort. So these symbols were suitable for decorating the walls of temples because it took great effort to make those symbols. Hieroglyphs are written in rows or columns and can be read from left to right or from right to left. So these were that type of symbols that were written in rows or columns. We can say they were made in rows and columns and can be read from left to right or from right to left. The direction in which the text is to be read is defined by the direction of the human or animal figures that always face the beginning of the line, defined having a definite outline. So the direction had accurate outline, definite outline. The upper symbols are read before the lower ones. Egyptian civilization came to be known for its writing, as they wrote everything down and kept records. Students, as I told you in the beginning that Egyptian civilization was well-versed, well-known civilization, and they were very expert in everything. They had rules and regulations, so they wanted to keep records for keeping records in history. They wanted to save them. For this purpose, they used papyrus as well as the temple and pyramid walls for writing. Papyrus is a material prepared in ancient Egypt from the pithy stamp of water plant. At first they used pictures known as hieroglyphics, but it took too long to write like that. So they created a new form of writing called demotic. Demotic denote or relate to the kind of language used by ordinary people. So they created a new form of writing called demotic, i.e. coming from the spoken language. Firstly, they thought that the medium of hieroglyph was too difficult to understand. It was too long to write. So they created a new form of writing that was called a common language, a kind of language that was used by ordinary people. Archaeologists discovered how to read demotic writing but could not read the hieroglyphs till the Rosita Stone was discovered 200 years ago. Students, Rosita Stone was discovered in Egypt. The stone is a broken part of a bigger stone slab. It had the same story written on it in Greek, Demotic, and Hieroglyphic. Scholars and experts thus managed to read the picture writing form and to decipher and hieroglyphics. Decipher, convert a text written in code into normal language. Students, the Rosita Stone was found in the Egyptian village of Rosita near the Nile Delta in 1799 by French soldiers fighting there. It is now kept in the British Museum in London. It helped in deciphering the written language called Hieroglyphic. Now come to page number 8. Here is about Papyrus. Students, what is Papyrus? Do you know? Students, papyrus is a material similar to thick paper that was used in ancient times as a writing surface. It was made from the pith of the papyrus plant that was on the bank of river Nile. Papyrus is a thin paper-like material produced from the pith, inner part of the papyrus plant, which grew in abundance in the Nile Delta of Egypt. Papyrus is first known to have been used in ancient Egypt, but it was also used throughout the Mediterranean region. Ancient Egyptians used this plant as a writing material and also for boats, mattresses, mats, rope, sandals and baskets. So this plant was very much important for the people of Egypt. They used this plant or material for boards, mattresses, mats, rope, sandals and baskets. So it was very useful plant at that time. Papyrus was first manufactured in Egypt as far back as 3000 BCE. It is made from the stamp of the papyrus plant by cutting out the sticky, fibrous pith in long strips, soaking it and then pressing it down and gluing it in 2 layers to make a thick paper. So this was the process how they used to make a thick paper by cutting out the sticky fibrous pits in the long strips, then soak it and then pressed it down and gluing it into layers, and the result was a thick paper. Its use in Egypt continued until it was replaced by more inexpensive paper introduced by Arabs. So it had been used for a long time until another material or another invention was introduced by Arabs. Students, the simple definition of a pyramid is a large structure built especially in ancient Egypt that usually has a square base and 4 triangular sides meeting at a point and that contains tombs. Students, we can say that the Egyptian pyramids are ancient pyramid shaped masonry structure located in Egypt. Most were built as tombs for the country's pharaohs and their companions during the Old and Middle Kingdom periods. Students, the most famous Egyptian pyramids are those found at Giza on the outskirts of Cairo. Several of the Giza pyramids are counted among the largest structures ever built. The pyramids of Khufu is the largest Egyptian pyramids. It is the only one of the seven wonders of the ancient world still in existence. Now you open your page 8 and read about the pyramids with me. People today are fascinated by the temples and pyramids of ancient Egypt. The sheer complete size and the precision of their construction, quality of their construction is amazing, especially because they were built at a time when people did not have the machines as we have now to help in completing the buildings. Students, built during a time when Egypt was one of the richest and most powerful civilizations in the world. The pyramids, especially the great pyramids of Giza, are some of the most magnificent man-made structure in history. Their massive scale reflect the unique role that the pharaoh or king played in ancient Egyptian society. So people are very amazed to look at the construction and style of these pyramids. The Egyptians believed in a life after death and prepared for it physically as well as spiritually. Pyramids, which are counted as one of the seven wonders of the world, are the huge tombs built by pharaohs for themselves. Students, Egypt's pharaohs expected to become gods in the afterlife. To prepare for the next world, they erected temples to the gods and massive pyramids, tombs for themselves. They were filled with all the things each ruler would need to guide and sustain himself in the next world. Understand, students? The Egyptians used the art of mummification to bury their dead. The bodies were carefully embalmed and wrapped up in cloth bandages to preserve them. Embalmed, preserve. The methods of embalming or treating the dead body that the ancient Egyptians used is called mummification. The methods of embalming or treating the dead body that the ancient Egyptians used is called mummification. They used special processes. The Egyptian removed all moisture from the body, leaving only a dried form that would not easily decay. It was important in their religion to preserve the dead body in as lifelike a manner as possible. Understand, students? So this was the art of preserving their mummies. Now come to next paragraph. The huge tombs also contained goods including grains and honey, which they might need in the afterlife. They also made models of objects of everyday life to be buried with them, such as toys, clothing, and jewelry. The pharaohs and their relatives were the best preserved, and the most famous mummies are those of pharaohs Tutankhamun, Seti, and Ramesses II. Students, during the 3rd and 4th dynasties of the Old Kingdom, Egypt enjoyed tremendous economic prosperity and stability. Kings had a unique position in Egyptian society. They believed to have been chosen by the gods to serve. Ancient Egyptians believed that when the king died, part of his spirit remained with his body. To properly care for his spirit, the corpse was mummified, and everything the king would need in the afterlife was buried with him, including gold vessels, food, furniture, and other offerings. The pyramids became the focus of a cult of the dead king that was supposed to continue after his death, and their riches would provide not only for him but also for the relatives, officials, and priests who were buried near him. Understand, students? Students, here is figure 2.5. The Khufre pyramid is guarded by the Sphinx, a mythical creature with a lion's body and a large human head, carved from a mound of natural rock at Giza. Students, you know about this Sphinx? You know? Have you read about it before? Students, a Sphinx is a creature with the body of a lion and the head of a human. A Sphinx is a creature with the body of a lion and the head of a human, with some variations. In ancient Egypt, a lot of times the head was that of a pharaoh or a god. In ancient Egypt, a lot of times the head was that of a pharaoh or a god. The Egyptians built Sphinx statues to guard important areas such as tombs and temples. Now come to page number 9. The Egyptian system of counting. The Egyptians invented the decimal system of counting. Decimal system or decimal number system used in mathematics for writing numbers. They used 7 different symbols. 1 was represented by a single stroke, a mark made by drawing a pen. 10 was shown by drawing 1 hobble, i.e. a strap used to tie an animal's feet. 100 was shown by drawing 1 coil of rope. As you can see from the picture, with the start, you can see a coil of rope. 1000 was represented by a drawing of 1 lotus plant. As you can see from the picture, he is under number 4. 10,000 was shown as 1 finger. 100,000 was represented by a drawing of 1 frog. As you can see from the picture, this is a symbol of 10,000. A hieroglyph image of 6 frogs in a row would mean 600,000. One lake was represented by the figure of a god with raised arms. Students, we will discuss about the civilization and lifestyle of that era. Between 6000 BC and 5000 BC, hunters and food gatherers moved into the Green Nile River Valley from less fertile areas of Africa and Southwest Asia. They settled down, farmed the land, and created several dozen villages along the river banks. These people became the earliest Egyptians. Although Egypt was warm and sunny, the land received little rainfall. For water, the Egyptians had to rely on the Nile River. They drank from it, bathed in it, and used it for farming, cooking, and cleaning. The river provided fish and supported plants and animals. To the Egyptians, then, the Nile was a precious gift. They praised it in a song. Hail, O Nile, who comes from the earth, who comes to give life to the people of Egypt. The Nile begins as two separate rivers. One river, the Blue Nile, has its source in the mountains of eastern Africa. The other, the White Nile, starts in marshes in Central Africa. Like the Mesopotamians, the Egyptians also had to cope with river floods. However, the Nile floods were very much more dependable and gentle than those of the Tigris and the Euphrates. As a result, the Egyptians were able to farm and live securely. They did not worry that suddenly heavy overflows would destroy their homes and crops, or that too little flooding would leave their fields parched. Every spring, heavy rains from Central Africa and melting snows from the highlands of East Africa added to the waters of the Nile as it flowed north. The Egyptians took advantage of the Nile's floods to become successful farmers. They planted wheat, barley, and flax seeds in the wet, rich soil. Over time, they grew more than enough food to feed themselves and the animals they raised. One reason for their success was the wise use of irrigation. Egyptian farmers first dug basins or ball-shaped holes in the earth to trap the flood waters. The farmers then dug canals to carry water from the basins to fields beyond the river's reach. The Egyptians also built dikes or earthen banks to strengthen the basin walls. In time, Egyptian farmers developed other technology to help them in their work. For example, they used a shadow, a bucket attached to a long pole to lift water from the Nile in the basins. Many Egyptian farmers still use this device today. Egyptians also developed geometry to survey or measure land. When floods washed away boundary markers dividing one field from the next, the Egyptians surveyed the fields again to see where one began and the other ended. Egyptians used Papyrus, a reed plant that grew along the Nile, to make baskets, sandals, and river rafts. Later, they used papyrus for paper making. They did this by cutting strips from the stalks of the plant. Then they soaked them in water, pounded them flat, dried them, and then joined them together to make paper. The Egyptians used their papyrus rolls as writing paper. Like the people of Mesopotamia, the Egyptians developed their own system of writing. Originally, Originally, it was made up of thousands of picture symbols. Some symbols stood for objects and ideas. To communicate the idea of a boat, for example, a scribe would draw a boat. Later, Egyptians created symbols that stood for sounds, just as the letters of our alphabet too. Combining both picture symbols and sound symbols created a complex writing system that was later called hieroglyphics. In Egypt, few people could read and write. Some Egyptian men, however, went to special schools located at Egyptian temples to study reading and writing and learn to become scribes. Scribes kept records and worked for the rulers, priests, and traders. Scribes also painstakingly carved hieroglyphics onto stone walls and monuments. For everyday purposes, scribes invented a simple script and wrote or printed on papyrus. In Egypt, as in Mesopotamia, skillful farming led to surpluses, extra amounts of food. This freed some people to work as artisans instead of farmers. They wove cloth, made pottery, carved statues, or shaped copper into weapons and tools. As more goods became available, Egyptians traded with each other. Before long, Egyptian traders were carrying goods beyond Egypt's borders to Mesopotamia. There they may have picked up ideas about writing and government. The advances in farming, craft, and trade created a need for government in Egypt. Irrigation systems had to be built and maintained, and surplus grain had to be stored and passed out in times of need. In addition, disputes over land ownership had to be settled. Gradually, government emerged to plan and to direct such activities. The earliest rulers were village chiefs. Over time, a few strong chiefs united groups of villages into small kingdoms. Religion was deeply woven into Egyptian culture. Like the people of Mesopotamia, the ancient Egyptians worshipped many deities or gods and goddesses. The Egyptians believed that these deities controlled the forces of nature and human activities. The main Egyptian god was the sun god Re. This was probably because of Egypt's hot, sunny climate and the importance of the sun for good harvests. Unlike the Mesopotamians who imagined a gloomy life after death, the Egyptians took a hopeful view. They believed that life in the next world would be even better than life on earth. Following a long journey, the dead would reach a place of peace and plenty. One of the most important manuscripts written in ancient Egypt was the Book of the Dead. This was a collection of spells and prayers that Egyptians studied to obtain life after death. They believed that the god Osiris would meet newcomers at the entrance to the next world if they had led good lives and knew the magic spells. Osiris would grant them life after death. For centuries, Egyptians believed that only the pharaohs and an elite few could enjoy the afterlife. They also believed that the pharaoh's spirit needed a body to make the journey to the afterlife. If the pharaoh's body decayed after death, his spirit would be forced to wander forever. It was vital that a pharaoh's spirit reach the next world. There, the pharaoh would continue to care for Egypt. To protect the pharaoh's body, the Egyptians developed a process called embalming. First, priests removed the body's organs. A special salt natron was then applied to the body and it was stored for a number of days to dry. After this time, the body was filled with spices and perfumes, then stitched closed. Next, it was cleared with oil and tightly wrapped with long strips of linen. The wrapped body was known as a mummy. It was put in several wooden coffins, one fitting inside the other. The Pharaohs was then ready for burial in a tomb. About 2540 BC, the Egyptians built the largest and grandest of the pyramids, known as the Great Pyramid. It is located about 10 miles from the modern city of Cairo. This pyramid built for King Khufu. King Khufu is one of the three still standing in Giza, on the west bank of the Nile. It rises nearly 500 feet above the desert, covers an area about the size of 9 football fields, and contains more than 2 million stone blocks. Each block weighs an average of 2.5 tons. The Great Pyramid was the tallest structure in the world for more than 4,000 years. It is equal to the size of a 40-story building and is the largest of about 80 pyramids found in Egypt. The Great Pyramid is truly a marvel because of Egyptians built it without using beasts of burden, special tools, or even the wheel. What led to the fall of ancient Egypt? A powerful and technologically advanced civilization. While pinpointing the specific factors that led to the demise of the ancient Egyptian civilization is difficult, several early signs of weakening did emerge, leading to the eventual fall of ancient Egypt. The first sign of weakening was a loss of military power and lackluster military development due to available natural resources, while other surrounding and growing empires were able to forge iron from resources available locally. Egypt lacked access to ore and other necessary metals. With stronger weapons, Egypt became vulnerable to more powerful competing armies. Questions. List the reasons why civilizations began in river plains and valleys. Answer. Civilizations began in river plains and valleys for some reasons as 1. Rivers were attractive locations for the first civilizations because they provided a steady supply of drinking water. 2. The river water made the land fertile for growing crops and allowed for easy transportation. 3. Moreover, the people in these civilizations could hunt the animals that came to drink water. Question 2. How was the river Nile useful for the people of Egypt? Answer. The Nile River played an important role in shaping the lives and society of ancient Egypt. The most important thing that Nile provided to the ancient Egyptians was fertile land. They also sold a lot of their wheat throughout the Middle East from River Nile. The Nile River also provided a lot of building material for the ancient Egyptians. Question 3. Explain what is meant by hieroglyph. Answer. Hieroglyph, a character used in a system of pictorial writing, particularly that form used on ancient Egyptian monuments. Hieroglyphic symbols may represent the objects that they depict but usually stand for particular sound or groups of sounds. Question 4. What is papyrus and what is it made from? Answer. Papyrus is a thin paper-like material made from the insides or pith or the papyrus plant. Question 5. Why do you think was writing important for ancient civilizations? The ancient Egyptians believed that it was important to record and communicate information about religion and government. Thus, they invented written scripts that could be used to record this information. The most famous of all ancient Egyptian scripts is Hieroglyphic. Question 6. Why and how did the Egyptians mummify their dead? Answer. The Egyptians believed in a life after death. The Egyptians used the art of mummification to bury their dead. The bodies were carefully wrapped up in the cloth bandages to preserve them. Question 7. What was the contribution of ancient Egyptians to numbers and counting? Answer. The Egyptians invented the decimal system of counting. They used 7 different symbols. In ancient Egypt, mathematics was used for measuring time, straight lines, calculating areas of land, counting money, working out taxes. The Egyptians figured out the numbers of days in the year with their calendar. Complete the sentences by selecting the right answers. 1. The kings of Egypt were known as A. Pharaohs, B. Sultans, C. Shahanshahs. Correct answer is Pharaohs. 2. The Sphinx is A. An Egyptian animal, B. An Egyptian god, C. A mythical creature. Correct answer is a mythical creature. 3. The ancient Egyptians called hieroglyphs A. Magic symbols, B. The words of God, C. Demotic language. Correct answer is the words of God. 4. The Rosita Stone was discovered by A. Egyptian scribes, B. The British Museum, C. French soldiers. Correct answer is French soldiers. 5. The source of river Nile is the Suez Canal, B. Lake Victoria, C. Lake Tanganyika. And the correct answer is Lake Tanganyika. Students, in this lesson, I'll tell you more about the keywords that are used in this chapter, as well as short questions and some multiple choice questions. So we start our lesson. First of all, glossary. Flagged. Flagged, to have something on both sides. Receded. Receded, moved back. Flourish, grow in volume. Flax, a plant whose fiber is used to make a linen, a soft, warm fabric. Embalmed, treated with herbal medicine in order to preserve. Scribes, a person who copies out documents, especially one employed to do this before printing was invented. Polytheists, worshipping many gods. Demotic, denoting or relating to the kind of language used by ordinary people. Hieroglyphic, a form of writing especially used in ancient Egypt, in which pictures or symbols are used to represent objects, concepts, or sounds. Papyrus, a material prepared in ancient Egypt from the pithy stem of water plant used for writing or painting. Short questions. 1. Who were the pharaohs? Answer. A pharaoh was the political and religious leader of ancient Egypt. Similar to a king, he owned all the land, made the laws, levied and collected taxes, and was responsible for the country's defense. 2. Who were the ancient Egyptian gods? Answer. The ancient Egyptians had many gods. Gods were often depicted with the bodies of humans and the heads of animals. Particular animals were chosen to represent each god's powers. The most important Egyptian god was Ra, the sun god. 3. What is hieroglyphics? Answer. The word hieroglyph has two Greek root words. Hieros means holy and glyph means writing. Thus, hieroglyph means holy writing. Ancient Egyptians used pictures in their writing to represent objects, actions, sounds, ideas, or words. The pictures are known as hieroglyphics. 4. Why the pyramids were built? Answer. Pyramids were built by ancient Egyptians as tombs for their pharaohs. There are about 8 pyramids that we know of in Egypt today. The biggest and most well preserved of them were built at Giza about 4,500 years ago. Choose the correct answers. 1. Pyramids were built by ancient Egyptians as tombs for A. Cats, B. Pharaohs, C. Workers, D. Slaves. Correct answer is B. Pharaohs. 2. The Great Pyramid is A. The tomb of the Pharaoh Khufu, B. The largest pyramid ever built, C. Located at Giza, D. All of the above. And the correct answer is all of the above. 3. When did pharaohs begin planning their tombs? A. When they knew they would die, B. When they got married, C. When their regions began, D. None of the above. And the correct answer is C. When their regions began. 4. The Egyptians used dash to build the layers of the pyramids. A. Ramps, B. Electrum, C. Limestone, D. Mastaba. Correct answer is A. Ramps. 5. The pharaohs were buried with A. Their wives, B. The things it was thought that they would need after death, C. Food, D. Treasures. And the correct answer is B. The things it was thought that they would need after death. 6. A pharaoh was the A. Political leader of ancient Egypt, B. Religious leader of ancient Egypt, C. A and B, D. None of the above. And the correct answer is C. A and B. 7. Which of the following was not a title held by a pharaoh? A. Leader of the army, B. Lord of the two lands, C. High priest of every temple. Correct answer is A. Leader of the army. 8. The first capital of Egypt was A. Ra, B. Horus, C. Menes, D. Memphis. And the correct answer is D. Memphis. 9. During the Old and Middle Kingdoms, pharaohs were buried in dash when they died. A. The desert. B. The valley of the kings. C. Pyramids. D. Memphis. And the correct answer is C. Pyramids. 10. How were hieroglyphics read? How were hieroglyphics read? A. Left to right. B. Right to left. C. Top to bottom. D. It depended on the pictures. Correct answer is D. It depended on the pictures. 11. In which of the following places were hieroglyphics not found? A. Written on the walls of tombs. B. Written on papyrus. C. Carved into stone. D. Written on mummies. Correct answer is D. Written on mummies. 12. The word hieroglyph means A. Picture writing. B. Holy writing. C. Animal writing. D. Ancient writing. Correct answer is B. Holy writing. Thanks for listening. For new videos, don't forget to subscribe my channel. And if you like my videos, please share and like.